Welcome, everybody, back into another edition of the Big Ten Show here on the Bleav podcast. Also, we have some exciting news. I am your co-host, Adam Carricker. He is Rhett Lewis, but Rhett has some connections. He has some pull. He's a big deal, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know. But shout out and thank you to Rhett for this. All right. Yeah. Per Sirius XM Radio, the Big Ten Show is scheduled to begin airing on Big Ten Radio on Thursday, August 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern time with additional replays throughout the week and weekend. Also, we'll be back on Bally's, okay, August 21st. And Sports Grid, they're talking about us. You know what to do, Sports Grid. Let's light this candle. How you doing, Rhett?
I'm good, man. Yeah, we've got all your audio video needs, all your platforms. Find the Big Ten Show essentially everywhere and on YouTube as well. Make sure you're a subscriber out there on the Bleav YouTube page. Of course, give us a like and a subscription and a review. In fact, on our podcast page, wherever you get those podcasts, we'll try to run through some of those comments. If you got any questions, leave those for us on the YouTube comments page. We'll get in there and try to answer some of those for you guys as well. A good way to interact with us on those YouTube comment pages there, and a good way to just kind of, enjoy the community of Big Ten football.
Hey, the Big Ten Show. It's where all your Big Ten hopes and dreams will come true. It's just science, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Michigan, they're in the news. Good, bad, whatever you think. And we're actually, so Brandon, we'll call him Brandon the video guy, does a great job behind the scenes, along with Lindsay. But Brandon's with us today, editing the videos, doing clips, putting everything together, putting the show together. He has some thoughts on this. We're going to bring him in at the end of our quick chat about Michigan here. But if you didn't know, all right, ladies and gentlemen, Michigan head football coach Sherrone Moore is reportedly facing level 2 NCAA violations for allegedly deleting a thread of text messages amidst the investigation into Connor Stalions' impermissible scouting. All right. But whatever the punishment Moore might face, it may not be very steep. At least that's according to Pete Thamel. He thinks there may be a small suspension, maybe not a suspension at all. Okay, Rhett, what are your, and it was 52 texts in this text thread. And he did eventually turn them over. Now, we don't know exactly what was said in them. It doesn't seem to be anything too crazy, or we'd probably know by now. Okay, but what are your thoughts on this, Rhett? Should they lay the hammer down and lay the smack down, or should they go easy on Sherrone?
Well, it feels like they have laid the smack down. It's just not on Sherrone Moore. It's on Jim Harbaugh.
Who's not here.
Right. Which is relatively easy to do at this point. And look, it sounds like the lack of cooperation and standing in the way of the investigation and doing things that hindered the investigation, like deleting text messages, things like that, were considered much more egregious than perhaps the actual infractions themselves. Mm-hmm. So Harbaugh gets the level 1 infraction for the way that he handled this whole thing. 4-year show cause penalty, 1-year suspension, which is a pretty big deal, although he's never going to come back and coach college football again. So it ultimately means very little on that front, other than him. His statement I thought was kind of interesting, right? He goes at Chargers camp, which, by the way, I had a chance to talk to him at Chargers camp about a week before this came out. Super excited about what he's doing now with the LA Chargers. But he came out and he said, it's always been a staple of the Harbaugh family. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. And I did not do any of those things. And that's basically what how he ended his reaction to the NCAA infractions. Although their response was basically saying he did all of those things. So I guess the truth is somewhere in the middle. But right now, Harbaugh gets the brunt of the penalties for Michigan. And like Thamel said, Adam, I don't expect this to be a huge deal for Michigan moving forward.
It's like the NCAA is such a joke, and we've known this for years. Eventually, it's not going to even exist, in my opinion, down the road. All these conferences are going to go do their own thing, starting with the Big Ten, SEC, topic for another day. Don't want to put the cart before the horse. But it's interesting. They want to make Jim Harbaugh the fall guy, which is fine, but he's not here. It doesn't matter. You could suspend him for 1,000 years. It doesn't matter. He pulled the Pete Carroll said, "Hasta la vista, baby." I guess that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, but you get what I'm saying. Well, right. And it doesn't matter. So to me, it's just kind of like the NCAA, to me, just looks ridiculous and laughable. As far as Sherrone Moore, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I think the biggest thing is you just keep hearing about it, and it keeps getting connected with Michigan.
But And a reminder, this was not, for Harbaugh, this was not related to the Connor Stalions case at all. This was only for the COVID-19 dead period recruiting.
Is that the hamburger thing or whatever?
Well, yeah. However anyone wants to characterize it. Yeah. So like we haven't even seen that part of the equation for Harbaugh, but again, it doesn't really matter.
I think the biggest thing is it just keeps getting brought up with Michigan, and it's hurting Michigan's reputation. I don't know if they care or not, but Brandon, the video guy, he's a Wisconsin guy. Okay, I'm sporting the Nebraska hat because we're talking about Nebraska today. I guess I'm a Nebraska guy, but I'm a Big Ten guy wrapped in a Nebraska guy. But Brandon, the video guy, had some strong thoughts before we came on air. And I was like, hey, man, would you be willing to share those thoughts on air? So, Brandon, what are your thoughts? What should happen to Michigan? Should something happen to their title from a year ago? Should it not? What are your thoughts on this, Brandon?
I think Michigan's gotten away with too much, Adam. I think they have. I think for too long, they've been getting away with too much. They have this massive ego, and I think it's time to deflate it. All right. I say we take that championship down. I don't think they should have it. I don't think they deserve it.
Strong.
Yes. And paired with the Connor Stalions thing, and I have a little thing pulled up right now that I saw the other day. Jim Harbaugh's record before Connor Stalions. I know that's not what the
penalties are. I get it.
Is right now, but nobody's talking about this, so I just wanted to mention it. Before Connor Stalions, Jim Harbaugh was 49-26. At the point of making this graphic, which I don't know if it landed at the end of the season, I don't know. But afterwards, Connor Stalions being hired, 40-3. Nobody's talking about that? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's shoot. Look, I think those are pretty. I mean, those numbers are either really circumstantial or they are proof positive. I think again, it's one of those hard things to discern, right? To decide, whether they just got better or if that was the reason they got better. I don't know if I'm qualified to make that distinction.
Do you guys think, obviously, Michigan's a big brand. They're a big money maker. They've been the best team in the Big Ten for 3 straight years. If you hurt your one of your 2 biggest brands and your best team in the past 3 years, one of your biggest money makers, do you think maybe they got away with a little bit more than another university might have? And again, we're not done with all the investigations, but what are you guys' thoughts on that? Because I will say this, because Brandon, you make a great point. I know there's a lot of people with a lot of very I was going to say vitriol feelings towards Michigan. I don't know if that's the right word, but my point is simply this. I look at what they did after Connor Stalions was ousted. They went on to go undefeated, beat Ohio State, win the national title, didn't even have to throw the ball in the second half to win at Penn State. Okay, it's kind of like Deflategate with Tom Brady, and then they went on to win the Super Bowl. So to me, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that, on all those kind of questions right there that I have in my head swimming around?
Yeah, I think they kind of proved it out. They won the title. Sorry, Brandon.
We love you, Brandon.
It ain't coming down. I think they earned it. I think it was the culmination of a foundation that was built, 5 years prior with a tremendously 4 and 5 years prior with a tremendously talented and committed group of upperclassmen and seniors. So many of which were drafted into the NFL this year and are going to be playing for NFL teams. Like that's no happenstance. Like that was a deliberate and terrific job of development. And I think we just saw the fruits of that labor this past season. Yeah,
they had more people going to the NFL draft than any other school in the country. But Brandon, I want to give you one final word. You got any final thoughts?
I was really mean. And I still feel I'm never going to admit they won the championship because I told all my friends they didn't.
Okay.
And so, there was no winner last year. And
all right.
You want me to really make Michigan people mad? As a Nebraska guy, that's Michigan's first national title since 1947. Some people will get that. Some people won't. Those who do and are Michigan people will get very mad at me, and I'm okay with that.
Are you talking about the way that we decided titles in 97?
97. That is correct, my friend.
All right. Fair enough, Mr. Nebraska. So, by the way, I think it's a perfect time to make our transition, shall we? Right? To continue our summer series. This is the alma mater edition. Former Indiana receiver Rhett Lewis. Former Nebraska and NFL defensive lineman Adam Carricker. We've got Nebraska and Indiana previews coming. We're going to start with Nebraska. But in the Indiana preview, I want to alert you, stay tuned. a one-on-one interview with Curt Cignetti, new head coach of those Hoosiers, coming up for you when we get into the Indiana portion of the program. So a lot going on here today, and we're just getting started. If you missed, by the way, our Michigan and Ohio State previews, those are out right now. You got to go check those out. Really two interesting teams, and I guess it would have been even more interesting if we'd have hit Michigan this week, but we kind of did anyway. So we'll kick this thing off here, Adam, and I'll kind of kick the fire off here with Nebraska and the way that we are kind of approaching this. Look, let's just quickly set the scene. Right, they got so close last year in Matt Rule's first year. Right, 5-7. They were sitting on 5 wins for a long time. We have not seen them with a winning season in 7 years. It's
2016.
It has been a minute. Is this the year? Is, of course, kind of the overriding topic, right? Do we get to 6 and beyond for Nebraska? So let's start here with the star power that's going to be a big reason why they do get things going again, get back onto the winning side of things, lay out some of that star power for us here at Nebraska.
So I'm just going to be honest. It was really easy to come out with potential breakout players. Same thing with Indiana. I have 7 for Indiana, just so people know, looking ahead to that. It was much easier to come out with potential breakout players than returning star power. There's a lot of returning players, a lot of good players. But when I think of star power, I think of name brand recognition. And that was a little bit tougher off a team that lost their last 4 games and didn't quite make a bowl game. So to me, center Ben Scott was who they sent offensively to Big Ten media days. Bryce Benhart, who is tied for the most starts as an offensive tackle in Nebraska football history. Zach Wiegert wanted me to point out that they didn't play as many games back in his day, with all due respect to Bryce Benhart, who's going to be the sole owner by a wide margin at the end of this year. Hopefully, stay healthy, my friend. But the guys that stood out to me were defensive linemen. And I'll be honest with you, unless you're like, I don't know, Lawrence Taylor, you're not really considered stars on the D line. Right. You're not the quarterback. You're not the running back, et cetera, et cetera. But Nash Hutmaker, nose guard, coming back, known as the polar bear. Anytime you have a nickname, that helps star power.
I do love that. Yeah.
He did wrestling this past winter, and he was an undisputed 4-time state champ coming out of high school, #1 heavyweight wrestler in the country. So I love the fact that Coach Manning, the wrestling coach, reached out to Coach Rule, said, hey, could he come wrestle for us? Hutmaker did it. Lost 30 to 40 pounds. It got down to 285. In my mind, I know what it's like to try to lose a bunch of weight. Putting on weight's nothing. For me, anyways, taking it off is what sucks. Well, I'm trying to do it right now, and the scale is not my friend. But I digress. So I'm like, all right, he got down to 285. Is he going to be able to get back up to 330, 340 in a healthy way by the time wrestling season ends to now? He's now up to 315. And Coach Rule, when we chatted with him, even said, I wanted him a little bit lighter. So hopefully that doesn't affect his play. I'm excited to see what he can do. But really the one name that stood out to me as far as potential star power, name brand type recognition was tight end Thomas Fidone. So this was the #2 tight end in the entire country when he came out of high school, right behind Brock Bowers. Everybody, according to Matt Rule, was trying to text and flat out poach this guy after the spring, and he chose to stay. He's year 2 after a couple of major knee injuries. That first year, I'm sure you know, Rhett, you might be cleared, but you don't feel normal. There's a difference between being cleared and feeling good. He's year 2. I'm betting he's feeling good now. And just trying to get through a year healthy is probably it's not probably. I've had it myself. It's a big deal. Now that he's done that, he can just go play football. And he's also he led all our pass catchers a year ago in receptions, and he's back as well. What are your thoughts, Rhett?
Yeah, look, I think you've kind of outlined the majority of those guys. I would add a couple more in the secondary. Isaac Gifford. I'd look at Tommy Hill in the secondary for Nebraska. But I think the biggest star to me is Tony White.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
You go from 100th total defense to 11th in the country in a year. That's some serious star power right there. And so, and I think then, as we get to biggest question marks later, it's like, okay, what do they do for an encore, right? That was year 1. Now what, right? Teams have had a year to kind of get their hands around this little bit of a hybrid system, right? The way that Tony runs things is not totally orthodox in college football today, but it does give opposing offenses a lot to think about, a lot to digest, and a lot to deal with in the framework of a play, a series, and ultimately a game. So I think those guys, and then defensively, obviously a star. And I think, anywhere we go we could say star power, we could say breakout player, we could say biggest question mark, and in each one of those categories, you could put Dylan Raiola. So,
for sure, I did. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that will then kind of lead us into the next piece of this thing, as you mentioned. Breakout players were a little bit easier for teams that didn't make the postseason, right? Because you're trying to see, all right, now who are those guys that are going to get you back there, right? That are going to improve or that came in via transfer portal. Any of that stuff sort of qualifies here. So I'll come right back to you with breakout players for Nebraska this year.
That's a phenomenal point about Tony White, by the way. And actually, Isaac Gifford can I have favorites? Is this just like my children? Can I have favorites? Okay, yes, Isaac Gifford may be my favorite player on the team. After chatting with him at Big Ten Media Days, like just the way he kind of carried himself and walked over there. But then we started talking about hitting and tackling, and just a simple thing, coming down and spilling a play against a guard, his eyes lit up like legit. And I'm like, all right, this dude's half crazy, and I love it, man.
Yeah.
All right, breakout players. Yeah, this was not a short list either. All right, quarterback, Dylan Raiola. Depending on what recruiting ranking surface you look at, but pretty much the number one ranked quarterback in the entire country coming out of high school. Basically, since he was a freshman, he's been ranked number one. Okay, and when you watch him, and yes, he looks like Patrick Mahomes. I couldn't believe somebody else didn't point that out sooner. I didn't want to point it out because I don't want to put that on I don't want to put that on a true freshman, but he looks just like him. Okay, his mannerisms, even the way he kind of plays, like he can run, but he chooses just to create space to find receivers open down the field, things of that nature. So Dylan Raiola's got name recognition. His dad played here, Remington Award winner, All-American center. Okay, 14-year career in the NFL as well. He appears to be the starter. Nobody's been named, but I think if anybody else was named at this point, I might fall over backwards in this chair right now. So he potential breakout player. Okay, now you look at the running back room. There's legit. I mean, I look at this running back room. There's like 4 or 5 different running backs that could start for us, from Emmett Johnson to Gabe Irvin to Ramir Johnson. Quentin Ives, probably a little bit down on the depth chart, but Matt Rule keeps mentioning him from time to time. Dante Dowdell, the transfer from Oregon. The 3 that seem to have an edge right now are Emmett Johnson, Gabe Irvin. If he can just stay healthy, the dude's a beast. He can stay healthy. He's a beast. And Ramir Johnson, I'm going with, I think it's going to be a 1-2 punch of Emmett and Gabe to start the season. And I'm seriously projecting with that because we don't know really. And it's the biggest question mark on offense is running backs right now. Yeah. But I think Emmett Johnson, this is a guy, as a freshman last year, was 4th string, ended up starting by the end of the year because we had 4 million injuries in the running back room. But you watch him in the spring, he got more first-team reps. You watch him in practices now, he's getting more first-team reps. I don't know how to describe him other than he just kind of has that, like that it way of finding the hole, of making the tackler miss. He's quick, but not incredibly elusive. He's fast, but he's not going to blow you away with his speed. Yet he just keeps getting yards. Somehow he just keeps moving forward. He's kind of got that little it thing with the ball in his hands, and I really like him. Jalen Lloyd, the speedster at wide receiver. Isaiah Nayor, the transfer from Texas, coming back from knee injury. And I think he was feeling good in the spring, so he's feeling great now. Jamal Banks, okay, an all ACC wide receiver from Wake Forest who transferred over as well. Those are the ones that stick out to me. And I pretty much went offense, but there's some defensive guys out there as well. But what are your thoughts, Rhett?
Yeah, I mean, look, somebody's going to have to break out of that quarterback room because there's nobody there. There was from a year ago, right? Sims and Purdy both gone. Heinrich is obviously still around. So, and maybe he breaks out in a different way, right? Maybe he continues to have an impact on this team in a different way, right? Because we all expect Dylan Raiola to be the quarterback. But I think when I look at that, Gabe Irvin is a name that really pops for me. You mentioned the health, obviously, the hip. Is what kept him out last year, and hopefully that's all good to go, and he becomes, somebody that, I guess one of the big questions is that running back room, does it have one breakout player, or is it a multitude of guys, right? Is it that committee approach? Because I don't know how often we get that one guy anymore, but I do think that Irvin has that potential. So I would certainly count him as one of those breakout players this year. And then I went right where you did with the receivers, Banks and Nayor, Texas and Wake, coming in through the portal. Like, all right, what did we know about them at their former school? I don't know that it's going to matter, because what we find out about them here this year at Nebraska is really where they're going to have a chance to make their name. So Those guys, the running back room and the wide receiver room, I feel like are ripe for breakouts just because we have not seen major performers, on those fronts here the last couple of years. So I would definitely put those names up there in terms of breakout players. Then, I mean, do we just agree in unison that the biggest question mark with this team, despite the talent, it's the quarterback? It's the quarterback, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it's the quarterback, but there's basically all the same people I just listed, as question marks, as potential breakout players. I do love Harburg as a Swiss Army knife of this offense, potentially. Yeah. Okay, almost a little Taysom Hill-esque.
Yeah.
But,
all
right, question marks of true freshman. I just wrote true freshman quarterback, which is obviously Dylan Raiola. I try to hedge my bets when I say things like this.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a true freshman quarterback who's not an option run first type guy as ready to play right out the gate game one.
That's important.
As Dylan Raiola. Like he's a pass first guy. Okay. Most of the time when it's true freshmen starting early, especially early in the year, they tend to use their legs, or it's an option type guy, something like that. Like the last true freshman to start was Adrian Martinez. Before that, it was Tommy Frazier, guys who use their legs a lot. So I don't think I've ever seen a true freshman as ready to start game one as I have Dylan Raiola. That as far as especially being a throw first type guy. That being said, he's a true freshman. You never know what you're going to get. I love the emotions I saw before the spring game from him. He was in tears. Spring game's a practice. You and I know that. But it's the most analyzed watch practice of the entire year. He was in tears because it was his lifelong dream coming true. What's that going to be like in a real game? At least we're at home versus UTEP and not on the road versus Minnesota or Ohio State like previous years. By the way, this will be the first time since 2019 Nebraska isn't on the road in the Big Ten Conference, their first game of the year. It's also the last time they won their first game of the year was 2019. Right. So true freshman quarterback, you never know what you're going to get. All right, offensive line. It's been close to about a decade since I could say we've got a good offensive line, like above average offensive line. We got a ton of experience, a ton of guys who played all over the place, from Ben Hart setting records for most starts at right tackle. Ben Scott, third year starting, 1 year at Arizona State, 2 years at Nebraska. You got Micah Mazuka. I like to just say Bazooka because it's fun, but he started at Baylor, Florida. Now, if he starts for us here, it seems like he will. Nebraska, that's 3 Power 5 schools, Power 4 now, I guess, schools. And so Turner Corcoran, Teddy Prohaska, unfortunately, has a season-ending injury, but Turner Corcoran's been starting for like decades, it seems, here at Nebraska. Like we have all this experience.
Ben Hart.
Can we put it together? Can we put it together? That is my question. We have every reason in the world to be good up front. Will we do it? Okay. Yeah. I go to defense. Running backs. Who's going to step up at running back? Can Gage stay healthy? What about Emmett? Am I wrong on that? Okay. Defensive back. Bleav Hill was injured. He looked good in the spring. He was going to start opposite Tommy Hill. That was pretty much a foregone conclusion. Unfortunately, he gets hurt. Ethan Nation, defensive back, transfers over the summer. USC defensive back transfer. Okay. Zaire, what's his last name? I forgot to write his last name down.
You got me.
Yeah, I'll look it up real quick. But here's what I wrote. I wrote Zaire Space Jam, 15 starts at USC because he appeared in the Space Jams movie, and that was what stood out to me. I'll look that up in a second. But he has 15 starts for USC, which is nice that he has experience. It's a Power 4 school. They don't play defense at USC, at least. Hopefully they'll play a little bit better this year. But does he step up? And who steps up?
Zaire Wright.
There we go. Zaire Wright. Who steps up in that opposite defensive back role, opposite of Tommy Hill? And we need a linebacker to step up. Is it Javin Wright? Is it the transfer from Syracuse, who I thought was going to – he played for Tony Wright. He started – Tony White. Started for him as a true freshman. Frankly, if we're being honest, came in a little bit out of shape, didn't look as good in the spring as everyone hoped. Can he step up in true freshman Vincent Shavers? Will it be sooner rather than later? At some point, that dude's going to play a lot of football for Nebraska. When does that happen?
Gotcha. It's low-hanging fruit. It is what it is. You've outlined a couple more, but the biggest question mark is Dylan Raiola. The biggest question mark is quarterback. There's no way around that. So I think we've covered that. I'm going to leave that one based on your analysis. I think we've covered that. There's no question. Anytime you were going to start a true freshman quarterback, that to me is the biggest question surrounding your program. How does he lead this team? Not only how does he play, but how does he lead this team, and how does he get this team back to postseason contention? So that's where I'm at on that one. Let's move to most intriguing matchup on this schedule for you, which begins August 31st at home against UTEP. What do you got?
Oh, it's Colorado. I mean, I didn't even have to think about it. It's Colorado. I assume we're going to beat UTEP. We come out the gate and we beat Dion and Shadur and Travis Hunter, who apparently none of those guys can be touched in practice. If you saw that video clip from Coach Prime, don't touch them. Okay, if they come into Lincoln and it's going to be insanity, it's a night game, and they get that win, and we're out of the gate 2-0. Okay, with very winnable games against Northern Iowa, Illinois. Before we go on the road, the first time we go on the road is Game 5 of the year at Purdue. Right. It's that Colorado game. If we win that and we're 2-0, that's going to set the tone for the entire year. If you lose it, it's not like the year's over, but it's just going to have a different feel.
And I'll go with 4 weeks later at home against Rutgers. So 5 of the first 6 games are at home. Now you do the math, right? UTEP, Colorado, you beat Colorado 2-0. Northern Iowa. By the way, I'll be there for that game with Big Ten Network.
All right.
Excited for that. That should be a win. Illinois is a winnable game. I'm not going to call it a win. Purdue, a winnable game, which means if you're sitting there at 5-0, and now the chance for 6 and postseason eligibility comes week 6 at home against Rutgers. Rutgers is as tough, both mentally, physically, as any team in the conference this year. They want to pound you into submission with Kyle Monangai. And so that will be a true test of wills, I think, for this team. So I have Rutgers traveling to Lincoln to take on Nebraska as their most intriguing matchup, because it could be a 5-0 Nebraska team. Hell, it could be a 5-0 Rutgers team.
It could be. You're right.
And that game would be huge. If
Rutgers
is 6 at Memorial Stadium, get out of here.
Rutgers is better than people realize. They got a break with their schedule. Nebraska got a break with their schedule. Like the 3 games that I look at out of the first 7 before you get to Ohio State at number 8, and I'm like, all right, don't overlook these opponents. It's obviously Colorado, but Rutgers, and then at Purdue, which is Dylan Raiola's first road start in his career in college football. It's those 3 games. But yeah, I like that pick with Rutgers.
Okay, so there we go. We'll get high-low win totals at the end of the show. We'll do that together with Indiana, which brings us into the Indiana portion of the program here. And again, stay tuned. Coming up, we're going to have that one-on-one interview with head coach Curt Cignetti coming up in just a second. So we're gonna kind of rapid fire this thing, going through star power here. How about I kick this thing off? Is that,
go ahead.
Is that
you
good
got
with
it.
you? Okay,
Yep.
As the alum of the Hoosiers, look, it hadn't been a good 3 years. Curt Cignetti comes in first year, a lot of bravado, and look, he's got the resume to back it up. He knows how to win. He has won everywhere he's been. He has turned around programs everywhere he has been, including most recently at James Madison, taking them from FCS to essentially Sun Belt champions right this past year. So I am extremely excited about what they're going to do this year. I think his coordinator level and really his position, I thought his coaching staff in general was really good. And getting a chance to meet them, see how they operate, see how they want to attack is really exciting to me. Guys like Tino Sinceri, Mike Shanahan on the offensive side, Brian Haynes on the defensive side, Pat Kuntz, who had been at Indiana before, running the defensive line. There's a lot of really sharp dudes. John Miller at the running back room, really sharp guys in this Indiana coaching staff. So star power, though, look, it's Carter Smith, left tackle. Who is a familiar name to Hoosier fans, started every game last year at left tackle, more than held his own. I think he had some big-time offers when he went into the portal from some big-time Power 4 schools and decided to come back to IU. Star power right there. Donovan McCulley, star power on offense, wide receiver, was one of the best wide receivers in the conference second half of last season. If he had played the first half the way he played the second half, we'd have been talking about an all Big Ten wide receiver. Donovan McCulley, too, went into the portal, had major offers from big-time programs, decided to stay at Indiana. Those 2 guys are huge. Defensively, it's going to look a lot different for this Hoosier team. I mean, there's so many James Madison transfers that are coming in here, but I'm going to tell you right now, one of the stars of this defense will be Jalen Walker, who comes in from JMU. He's going to line up right next to his buddy Aiden Fisher. Those 2 together, I feel like, will be stars for this Hoosier football team. I think there's a lot to kind of look out for on the other in the secondary. I think there's a lot that's unsettled there. One thing that is for sure, D'Angelo Pons, who also comes from James Madison, is one of the highest graded true freshmen in the country last year, playing for JMU, is going to become a star. So he was like borderline for me on star power and or breakout player, but I think he's going to be heavily relied upon for this Hoosier defense. And then I'll throw one other name in there for you, and that's Elijah Surratt, who PFF had as one of the highest graded receivers in the country a year ago. 1,000-yard season, absolute stud of a year for the Dukes last year. So those are the guys that I would go with on the star front. Anybody else that you had on your list?
I'll be quick. I'm just going to show some love to the guys in the trenches. All right, Mike Caddick, offensive lineman. This is a guy with 30. Yeah, guy with 37 career starts for the Hoosiers, and Linnell Carr, defensive end. He transferred from West Virginia a year ago. Last year with the Hoosiers, 33 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 10 starts.
Yep, great ones. Okay, let's move to breakout players. Now, this is kind of interesting, right? And I probably could have put this on Star Power, because I think anytime you have a conference player of the year that transfers in as a quarterback and is likely going to be the starter, in fact, another tease for you, Curt Cignetti has some interesting words in our conversation with him about who that quarterback is going to be for the Hoosiers this year. But Curtis Rourke, I think, is going to be a breakout player. He was the MAC Conference Player of the Year in 2022, tore his ACL late season. Last year didn't have as big a year. I think still coming off that ACL injury. I think a year removed now in this offense is going to be huge for IU. And then the next player to watch there for me is Miles Price, transfer wide receiver from Texas Tech. I think he's going to line up in the slot and 11 personnel. I think he is going to be an absolute stud in this offense. His stop-start acceleration and quickness is incredible. I would really look for him to have a big year, with, let's say it's either, Elijah Surratt, Donovan McCulley, EJ Williams, Omar Cooper on the outsides. Watch out for Miles Price and Miles Cross, who was another transfer wide receiver that came in from Ohio, along with Curtis Rourke. I think those guys are going to be breakout type players. And then I think the other guys that I would look out is Mikhail Kamara from JMU. I think he's going to be a tone setter on the defensive front for IU. He knows what this defense is all about, and I think he's going to be one of those guys that really comes in and makes an impact. And I think the nation's in the conference in particular is going to know his name when it's all said and done.
I tell you what, man, just doing this show with you, and I try to not be swayed by people, but just doing this show with you, learning about Indiana, learning more about Coach Cignetti, learning about the individuals who've transferred in, whether it be JMU or otherwise, and the guys who chose to come back, as you mentioned. Right. Okay, they had offers from big-time schools, and he was able to convince them to come back. I'm half tempted to say, Indiana's going to surprise some people this year.
Let's go!
Which is even harder to say because it's year one under a new coach. Yeah. But I'm half tempted to say it, dude. I'm excited to watch some Indiana football this year, man.
And look, you know what? We're gonna butt heads in week 8. Nebraska travels to Bloomington.
I like it.
I wouldn't be surprised if the big noon kickoff is there that week. It's going to be a big deal.
Right.
So mark that October 19th in Bloomington. It's going to be a big one. Certainly excited about it. So
I'll throw some other names real quick. I'm just going to throw them out there. Jameer Johnson, defensive back. I know he was hurt last year. Yep. There's a lot of folks who think he'll be DB1 for the Hoosiers this year. You mentioned him real briefly. Elijah Surratt at wide receiver, James Carpenter, defensive tackle, Aiden Fisher. You mentioned him earlier. Okay, transfer coming over from James Madison. And this one, I'm just going to be brutally honest. I had the chance to interview him, not on this show, unfortunately, but I had the chance to sit down and interview Justin Ellison, running back.
Oh, okay. Justice Ellison, yeah.
Justice Ellison, sorry. He's just the best dude ever. I just like him as a human being. It actually prompted me to go watch some of his high school film, his film at Wake Forest. He appeared in 43 games with 20 starts over 4 seasons. All right, Wake Forest. At Wake Forest, they named him third team All ACC in 2022. He rushed for 1,909 yards on 427 carries and 15 TDs. I like rooting for good people. I Bleav he was brought to Big Ten Media Days for a reason. Okay, so keep an eye on him, folks.
Great one. And it's a brand new running back room, right? Along with Elijah Green and Kalon Black. And I mean, it is a brand new clean slate at the running back spot. So that actually could be a breakout spot there. All right. Biggest question mark is, all right, for me, it's the elephant in the room, right? There's so much that is group of 5 about this team.
Yep.
Coaching staff comes in, players that come in. But I don't look at that as a negative. I look at that as a positive. I look at that as this is a hungry group, right? But they got to go out there and prove it. And to me, that is the biggest question mark. So many guys jumping up in competition this year. How does that ultimately work out? That's, to me, the biggest question mark.
We have the same exact question mark. I think I really like the new head coach there. Okay, Coach Cignetti. Now, just learn a little bit about him. Again, I'm getting edumacated with an M more and more on Indiana each and every day. 11-1 record last year in 2023. His fifth season at James Madison overall had a record of 52-9, 853 winning percentage, including a 19-4 run over 2022 and 2023. By the way, James Madison's first 2 seasons ever as an FBS program. It's hard to just jump on this stage and have that success right away. So it's not a gigantic leap to say, hey, it may take some time. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But they could be pretty good in the Big Ten eventually.
Yeah. And I think that brings us right into our most intriguing matchup because, look, this team, again, FIU to open the year, winnable game. Western Illinois better be a winnable game, right, in week 2. So to me, week 3, in the first game, it's yours too, right?
We have the same one, yep. Go ahead.
First game of the new Big Ten, Indiana travels out to Los Angeles, right here in my backyard, and they're going to go play in the Rose Bowl, where they have not played since they played USC in the Rose Bowl in 1967. They're going to play UCLA. And again, I think that is a winnable game. I think if you start off this thing at 3-0, then you get Charlotte at home, Maryland at home, at Northwestern, like you got a real chance to be going into this bye week, that first off week on October 12th, feeling really good. So to me, it is UCLA week 3 is the most intriguing matchup.
It's UCLA, and I have the same exact reason you do. And I pretty much said, hey, FIU, Western Illinois, Charlotte, 3-0 or 3 wins out of the first 4 games. I look at UCLA and I'm like, man, they get that win. They're 4-0 right out the gate. So I got the same game. Yep.
Okay, there it is. And so without further ado, again, we'll get to the high-low win totals right after this, but we want to send it back to Big Ten Media Days, where we had a chance to sit down and chat with the new head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers, Curt Cignetti. So, Coach, the winning formula, something you've had pretty much your entire career. We've talked about it, well documented. You won everywhere you've been. How did you cultivate it over time into what it is now?
I think I learned a lot from, my dad was Hall of Fame, of course, so there comes the fundamentals. And learned a lot from Nick, who really had, it was airtight.
Yeah.
And then every year you're a head coach, you sort of, you're improving.
Yes.
If you work and you're committed and you're improving your methods and things like that. So, it was sort of like my own formula. I've always been a trial and error guy.
Right.
But, when I felt by about the 3rd year, as a head coach, I was starting to, get the hang of it pretty good.
Right.
Even though I had some great success, year 2.
Sure.
But, it takes a lot of things. It's all about people.
Right.
People you hire, the people you recruit, and then you got to develop them. And nowadays with players, you got to retain them.
Now, in today's world, and obviously we talked about flipping the roster and bringing a bunch of guys in that you feel like are going to make this team, a winning, find that winning formula. Are there things that you look for, though, that lead you to believe that this group coming together now starting to move in the same direction with all the different faces coming from all the different places? Are there things you look for that they're showing you in terms of, all right, this team is coming together as one Hoosier team?
Yeah, well, I think you're evaluating them in the winter and the spring individually. And then you evaluate them collectively as an offense or defense, special teams. Then you get through the summer program, and now we're going into August, which is a ramped up spring. Second time through, they all ought to get better. And then there's intangibles that are very important in terms of winning games, close football games. So, I think we got a lot of guys that have the right stuff. We got some areas that we need to shore up. We're not there yet, but I don't think anybody in the country is there yet. That's why you practice in August. But we got a lot of experienced guys that have a lot of positive production, play winning football. We got a lot of guys on this team who won a lot of games.
Sure.
Brought a champion from a championship culture that have positively influenced other guys and sort of enhanced what we want to get done from a culture standpoint. But now we got to take this up another level or two here in camp. Because we're not where we need to be yet, trust me.
When it comes to quarterbacks, you've been extremely successful in those quarterbacks that have played for you being the best in the conference. And, you've got some guys, this year, Taven and Curtis, as you battled through the spring, will continue, to compete into fall camp. Are there things that you have, when this is going to be the guy, like are there set attributes and skill sets that they have portrayed that lead you to believe that?
Well, who plays quarterback the best?
Yeah.
You know, right now Curtis Rourke is at the top.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never named a starting quarterback.
Right.
I mean, I've tried a guy out there for the first snap, even player of the year in the league. But if Curtis Rourke continues his development, I expect him to play a lot of football for us.
Yeah.
Taven's got to really improve, keep improving. He took strides, and he knows the areas he's got to improve. And Rourke's got to improve too.
Yeah.
Because you never know what might happen. And then we got two young ones that have good futures. So we've had good success with them, and I'm confident that that position will be more than adequate this fall.
There you go. We're going to an old stadium to kick a team's ass. I mean, it's as business, and as simple as it boils down to every week, right? And I was talking to your players, talking to Justice Ellison. He said that, in Aiden, saying that business-like approach is one of the things that they love about you. Do you feel like that message has really started to resonate with these guys, week in and week out? We know what we got to do.
Well, I'm all about winning.
Yeah.
And not all the other fluff.
Yeah.
We graduate players and all that, and they do community service.
Yeah.
But I'm all about winning. And when you come into a program like this, you got to change the way people think inside and outside the program, right? We're not going out there to tour California or go on a cruise.
Damn right.
We got a lot of fans going out to the Rose Bowl. Well, that's good. We're going out on business. We got something we got to get done out there. In my messaging with the team, I'm kind of a man of few words. Like, I try to really make them count, because once they turn you off, it's hard to get them back. So, that's just how I do it.
And then, lastly here, as you get set, as you're, kind of getting fall camp rolling here, what are some of the things that you're really going to have your eye on, whether it's, certain guys or certain position groups that you want to see take that next step?
Well, I think when camp starts, you quality control everything.
Yeah.
We always watch all the 11-on-11 tape as a staff after practice is over. After they've gotten lunch, we're going to practice in the morning, or 7-on-7. But we'll watch all the drills, all the competitive drills early to quality control all the drills that they're being done the way we want them to.
Right.
And then it's on the 11-on-11 as we get moving, you work the situation, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
We got to look. Every guy on the team's got to improve. Okay, and we have to be a team.
Yeah.
And individual goals are important, but team goals supersede individual goals.
Yeah.
And I got to get everybody thinking alike.
Yeah.
Okay. But we've got to be able to play the game the way we want to play the game. Like, we really have to be where our feet are, with a clear, focused mind, every single play, and play that play like it's nothing. 6 seconds of play. Every play's got a life and history of its own. Fast, physical, relentless, smart, disciplined, poised. On to the next play, regardless of success, failure, not affected by success, not affected by failure.
Right.
And every guy's got to do his job the way he was coached to do it. And that becomes multiplication, not addition. Great things can happen then. Okay? So, and we're not even talking about the physicality part or the finishing part or the effort and all the other things, right?
Right.
And, you can't come out and be a superstar with no pads on, and then you put the pads on, you disappear. Or you can't come out and be a great player on day 4 and average day 5, 6, and 7.
That's right.
And so the standard and the expectation level have to continue to increase. And we have some guys that get that better than others, quite frankly. And we're having to reteach some guys.
Sure.
So, but all in all, I like where we're at.
Coach, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Well, it was awesome to get a chance to spend some time with Coach. Again, kind of a home game at Big Ten Media Days. He had a lot of fun up there on the podium. A lot of people had a lot of fun listening to him. And look, that has been one of those things, right? He's not afraid to speak his mind. He's not afraid to tell you that he wants to win here and he plans to win here. And I love that. So let's kind of keep this going here with the Indiana theme. We'll use IU to kick off the high-low win totals. And look, I'm going to be bold here, and I know it's going to sound very homerific, and that's okay. That's kind of what this particular summer series preview and podcast is going to turn out to be. But I think the low watermark here for this team is 6 wins. I think bowl eligibility, looking at this schedule, with 8 home games,
and opportunities within the conference. Not Penn State's off. They don't get Oregon. They skip some of those high caliber. Obviously, you still got Ohio State and Michigan, and those are very tough games. But I'm excited about what this schedule brings. I think the low water mark is 6 wins. And I think Kurt Signetti would give me a call and say, "What the hell are you doing? Saying we can't win 12 if I don't say that's the high water mark." But I'm not going to say that. I'll say the high water mark at this point is 9. So 6 to 9 is kind of the range for me in year one.
We're very similar. The low water mark, don't hate me. I'm just looking at the schedule, and I got you down for FIU, Western Illinois, Charlotte. And to me, the low water mark is if the floor just falls out. So to me, the low water mark is 3 and 9. I don't expect that. That's just if the floor just falls out. There's a ton of injuries. Ball doesn't bounce your way. The high water mark, I'm looking at this. It's hard for me to predict Indiana to beat Ohio State and Michigan at this moment in time. And Nebraska is going to stomp a mud hole. So I got the high water mark at 9 and 3, 3 and 9 to 9 and 3.
All right, we're mirrored. I like that.
Very close.
I think that's fair enough. Okay, so with that, then let's move back to Nebraska, and I'll let you kick off the high-low on that front.
So to me, the low water mark is 6 and 6, and I sat across from Rule, and he looked at me and he said, "If we don't go 6 and 6 this year, like we've got problems." So 6 and 6 is the low water mark.
Yeah.
And at the high water mark, I look at this schedule. There is, and I'm not saying you can't beat Ohio State, but I'm not going to predict that. That'd be asinine at this point in time. So Ohio State, you just mark that down as a loss. Right here, right.
11? Are you giving me 11?
Okay, this is if everything goes right. Okay, and Dylan Raiola wins the Heisman Trophy and everything else. Yes, okay. 11 and 1, 6 and 6 to 11 and 1.
Okay, all right. I mean, that is a dramatic, but that's what this is all about, right? That's what this is all about. And I think if we look at our friends who make a living doing this, the projection is 7.5 wins, depending on where you look for Nebraska. So I do think that they are right around that mark when it all comes down to it. I think, again, like you, I think the low water mark is bowl eligibility here. I think it is 6 wins. I'm going to be a little more conservative on the high front, and I will say that there are some games that could go either way. I think at USC is a tough one. I think at Iowa is going to be a very difficult ball game. I'll say at Ohio State. I mean, like the fact that we're saying at on all 3 of those is something to kind of keep in mind. And then that Rutgers game, that IU game, if you get those two, both those teams are momentum going forward. I'm going to say the high water mark for this team is 9 wins. Okay,
dude, so if they got 9 wins, people in Lincoln, Nebraska would be so happy.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, and damn right, you should be.
Yes,
you ran Frank Solich off for not winning 10.
I did not do that
every year.
I found out playing cards at my grandparents' house that on ESPN that Solich was fired. I was a freshman, man. That wasn't me.
I hear you. So yeah, that's where we're at there. But look, as you said, things go the right way. Maybe 11.
What's your official record prediction for Indiana and Nebraska? You got an official prediction?
I truly Bleav that Indiana is going to win 8 games this year. Now, look, I don't want to go off the rails here, but I remember, talking to a friend of mine who played in the NFL, and he was telling me, it was like, beginning of training camp one year, a head coach stood up and goes at the top of the, first meeting of the season, goes, "I think we win 10 games this year." And this guy was telling me, it's like, I was looking around, and he's like, I raised my hand. I was like, "Coach, which 6 games you plan on losing? Because I don't want to show up for those."
Ooh, all right. You know what I mean? I like it. I like it.
It's hard. It's hard to say that coming, as an alum of the team. I think they're going to win every game, but look, conservatively, take the homer hat off. I think they win 8 games.
So I look at the schedule, and I do think it's very plausible to start 4-0. Maybe 5-1 after the first 6. And the last 6 is kind of where things will be determined. I am going to predict you guys to beat Purdue, the last game of the year without having seen a single snap yet. So there's 6 wins, and then there's 5 games that are kind of up in the air. You look at Michigan, Ohio State, probably going to mark those down as losses. So 6 and 3. So then you look at Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State. Can you win 1 or 2 of those? Personally, I'm going to go with 7 and 5, but I don't hate 8 and 4. I don't hate 6 and 7.
7's a huge win. It's more than 100% improvement from a year ago. So you take that, right? And
All right. So what's your final win total for Nebraska then? Is it 9?
Okay, I'll go game by game real quick. UTEP win, Colorado win, Northern Iowa win, Illinois win, Purdue win,
5-0.
Rutgers, Indiana win. Now, there's
7-0.
going to be a true freshman moment in here. There's going to be a game where the ball doesn't bounce our way. Maybe Rutgers shocks the crap out of us. I don't know. So I'm going to say 6-1. Okay. Probably lose to Ohio State 6-2. I think they can beat UCLA 7-2. Maybe not USC. So I'm thinking 7-3. Is that math correct? Is that 7-3 or 6-3 where I'm at right there? I think it's 7-3. And then I think
7-3,
I think we split Wisconsin and Iowa. Those games are always close. Win one, lose one, 8-4. What about you?
8-4. I think that's solid. I thought that this team was going to get to 6 last year. I really did, the way they were playing, and then obviously it kind of fell off the rails. So I think 8 wins is a real possibility here. So that's kind of where I would go with it. I'll say give me 8-4 on that, with losses to USC, to Iowa State, and to Indiana.
So you've got us beating Ohio State. Oh, you said Iowa. You meant Ohio State. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. Losses
Right,
to Ohio State, USC, Iowa, and Indiana.
Your alma mater would be pumped. 8-4, 7-5.
It's the alma mater
fans
episode.
would be pumped.
Yeah,
hey, don't call us biased, because
right.
we're going to say it ourselves. We're just a smidge biased, but we do our best.
Yeah. All right, man. I think that does it for us. Yeah.
I think so. This has been a lot of fun. Keep an eye out for us in the future, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Sirius Radio, Bally's, come on, Sports Grid. Let's go. Let's light this candle.
All right, man. Well, with that, thanks everybody. Thanks to Brandon for jumping in today, and thanks to Lindsay and everybody behind the scenes. We'll catch you next time here on the Big Ten Show.